for joining us for an episode of All About PR. If you're tuning in for the first time, on this podcast, we speak to experts from the field of PR and communication from across the world and bring you an interesting conversation on the subject every week. Digital is no more the new kid on the block. It is here to stay. And digital and PR have always had a Ross and Rachel kind of relationship, which I think needs to change to a more compatible Phoebe Mike or a Monica Chandler kind of relationship. And this can happen if we could learn to celebrate our differences and accept each other's quirks. Intrigued? If you are a PR professional who's always viewed a digital agency working with your brands as a competitor of frenemy, then this is your chance to know more about digital and through this, learn how to explore a more collaborative way of working together. And really, this works when you have a firm understanding of both worlds. Today on the podcast, to take us to the other side, we have Rajni Daswani, Director Brand Experience and Employee Engagement at SoCheers. She joins us to help us understand how we can work together, trace similarities between both fields, and how to make that switch, just like she did. A little more about Rajni before we add her on. She is a multitasker and quick learner, and after different stints in various industries, she joined the leadership team of SoCheers in 2014 and quickly rose through the ranks to become a part of the core team. With 14 plus years of experience in the industry, she combines her PR skills and digital insight to create meaningful brand experiences at SoCheers. Today, she oversees the client servicing on all accounts and is a troubleshooter for all her teams. She wears multiple hats, works across teams and verticals, and as she does this, she keeps an eye out for loopholes and challenges that need to be addressed to make work life and output better. Whew, that's a full day every day. And there is more. She oversees 100 plus professionals at SoCheers who look up to her for guidance. Under her leadership, the team has won several awards for their work. In just the last year, campaigns under her guidance have won more than 30 awards across categories, not counting the multiple awards that she has won herself on an individual level. So let's add her on. So, hi Rajni, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tarun. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's lovely to speak to you today. I've been following your journey for quite some time. You have had a very interesting career graph. So let's start from the very beginning. A very good place to start. How did you get started in communication?
So, it's a very right out of college story when I studied for finance because it was easier to score marks in that. But in college, I studied management. So, I had a lot of communication subject then, and I was really good at it at that point. But because I had studied and majored in finance, I sort of went into that career. But in a year or two, I realized that this is not my cup of tea. And I think I'll be better at communications. I need to be in a more creative field. I think that goes better with who I am as a person. So I switched to PR at Perfect. And that's where I started my communications journey. It was an interesting place to start working on. What I'd heard back then is Perfect Relations is like the base ground to start. Everyone who does well in PR has started their journey from here. So I was happy to be there. Since I was from a finance background, they put me in the corporate and finance team where I was managing clients. So it was interesting to learn and grow there. And digital was just starting to boom then. So I think even Perfect Relations had set up a digital team, but I was still more into core main PR.
Okay.
And then I just didn't see PR as the right fit for me at that point because I was also parallelly working on my own brand. And on that, I was exploring a lot on digital on my own to sort of grow the brand, to drive my sales, and to reach out to people. That's when Instagram had just come out, and blogging and influencer marketing was just about getting started. And it was a very interesting place to be in because you're at the cusp of something that everyone's exploring. So there is a lot to learn. And even better when you're doing it for your own brand. So you're sort of always constantly thinking on how you can do better, what are best practices other people are using. So that's where my shift from PR to digital started happening. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something I should look at exploring. And that's when I left Perfect. And I went back to finance because that was like a 8 to 5 job I could get done early. And I had a lot of time to spend on my brand. And in that 1 year, I spent a lot of time understanding digital, growing my brand. Like at that point, we were able to grow Instagram followers to 5,000 in like a really quick go because there were no branded content pieces back then. There was no algorithms by Instagram. Instagram was pushing organic content. So it was a very exciting space to be in.
Those were exciting times when Instagram didn't have any algorithms that we had to worry about. But tracing back your journey to the very beginning, what was that one moment where you decided, okay, I need to switch to digital? What was that one point in your life?
So I was freelancing with SoCheers. It's owned by my friends Mehul and Siddharth. So I had nothing to do as freelancing content writing, and these guys told me, "Why don't you just help us run a Twitter contest?" And at that time, Twitter contests were very, very popular, and again, very easy to get something trending just if you had enough quality conversations going around it. So I did that, and I made it happen for one of their clients in like an hour. And that was the first time that I realized that I am really good at this and I could probably make a career out of digital. I mean, if I've not done anything previously and I'm able to get that done in 1 hour by just understanding what's happening on the platform, I think there is a lot of scope for me here to explore. I think I can do well at this. And that was also a time in my life when I was trying to figure what I should be doing next. So digital just came to me.
I think it happened at the right moment, right?
Yes.
When you went into digital after having done a stint in PR, what were some of the shockers you came across?
So one of the biggest things was that in digital, you were talking to the customer directly. So whatever communication and formulation of messaging that you needed to do had to be done from a very customer point of view. While in PR, we were talking to more journalists or publishers who are then going to convert that messaging to a customer. So the approach was very different. And I felt more comfortable directly talking to a customer than having to go to a party who would then convey my messaging. So that was something that came as a shock to me, but also very comforting because I felt that was better for me.
Interesting. So, did your experience in PR come in handy when you made the switch?
Yes, definitely, because PR helps you get a base understanding of what communications is. What is the right messaging to put across? How does a brand want to come across? So I learned a lot of those basics when I was working in PR. And those basics are something that you will carry on in whatever communications and marketing job you'll do, right? Because that's how you're going to present your brand. So definitely there were a lot of learnings to take forward from PR to digital.
Absolutely. I think those basics are true for every vertical within communication as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are there any days when you think or you want to quit the field or switch lanes or maybe come back to PR? If yes, then what? If not, then what keeps you in the digital industry?
So to be extremely honest, you ask any agency professional this, digital can be quite a handful. There is something new happening every day. There is something new or exciting happening every minute sometimes. So it's exciting because there is something new every day. I wake up in the morning and I don't know what my day is going to look like because there can be a crisis, there can be something trending, and the client wants to do this, or it's just every day is a new day. But it does get to you after a while because it's also excruciating. It's a 365-day, 24-hour job because
Right.
digital never really shuts down. So after a point, definitely, if you're not taking enough breaks or if you're not taking enough time for yourself, it can definitely get to you, especially if you're in an agency or even on the brand side. If you're working in industry like entertainment, which never really sleeps, it can get to you. But the best part is that every day is new in digital. It's very exciting. And at no point can I say that I'm an expert in digital because I can't be. There might be something else that comes up tomorrow which I have absolutely no clue about. That's what keeps it interesting and that keeps it exciting.
Okay, let me reframe the question. How many times in a month or a quarter or a year do you say, I quit?
I think every second day.
Okay. I mean,
Every second day.
it's nice to have an honest opinion on that because I think in PR we do pretty much the same thing. Almost every week or every month, you would probably say, okay, this is it. I'm not doing anymore. I'm out of the game.
Yeah.
And it just keeps
Yeah,
you going
it's
in.
exactly. It's exactly the same feeling because it's just like there is the same thing happening again and again and again, and you're like, listen, I just solved for this, it can't come up again. So yeah, it does.
Okay, so tell me, what does a day in the life of Rajni look like?
When I wake up in the morning, I don't really know what my day is going to look like. So Some days are extremely planned when there are agency related work calls because they can be planned. But if there is a urgent client call, then it's usually understanding what the client wants, getting all the internal teams involved, sourcing out the best people who you know will be able to get this job done really quick. Because digital is also about quick turnarounds and making sure we are doing it better and faster than someone else, because it's also an opportunity game in general. So it's usually on doing ad hoc things. Like just today, we've got like a new project and the team has zero bandwidth. So now my last 2 hours have been spent on just figuring out how to get enough bandwidth to pick up the project because it's an exciting project to do. Then there is a lot of alignment of internal teams that needs to be required. I look at employee engagement. I look at PR and corporate communication at SoCheers. I also look into the client servicing team. I also look into a little bit of business development. So my role is a little overlapping on all terms and it's all over the place. But off late, I try to shut down by 7:30 because it's a constant. If you keep going constantly, it can get to you eventually. So I try and take out a little bit of me time to be able to balance and come back to work very fresh and excited with vigor the next day.
I mean, even though it's hard to believe that you can actually take a day off, it's really nice to hear that you do take the time off to restore yourself.
Yeah, it's important after a while because we are working weekends, we are working at 12 o'clock in the night if there is a launch happening. So it gets very difficult to draw lines. So wherever possible, we make sure, even at SoCheers, we tell people that take the break. Whenever you can take the break, don't extend yourself. Work will keep happening. It's a
Right.
never ending thing. So
So,
yeah.
that brings me to my next question. It's interesting that you mentioned this now. My next question is actually about the evolution of the digital industry. And like you rightly mentioned, it has exploded over the last, I would say, last couple of years, in fact, right? There is just no end to the kind of information consumption that we can create for people or the consumption habits of people as well. I want your perspective to be able to understand, since you've seen the evolution of the industry also. Is this
Yeah.
better or worse?
It's a little bit of both. So when I joined digital, right, I started in 2014, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So it was only Facebook, a little bit of Twitter. Instagram had just started. Brands weren't really sure. You
Right.
could plan what your digital activities would be. There were limited number of platforms and there was one sort of communication that you wanted to put out everywhere.
Right.
And algorithms on digital were not organic reach. Your content really mattered for you to get. So it was a lot more wholesome back then to be able to create an impact. Coming today, the overall volume of digital has increased and so has the consumption. The number of people who are using digital, the number of brands who are using digital, both have increased. So consumption has gone up and so have the opportunities to put out your branded content. Earlier, we used to have 2 or 3 platforms that we were focusing on. Today, you can focus on a Clubhouse, you can focus on a Snapchat, you can focus on Twitter, Instagram, there's Pinterest. There are multiple options like MX Takatak and all those short form content apps. Like there is a dearth of opportunities to able to showcase that, and brands want to be everywhere. So having that one sort of communication going to all of them, going on all of these platforms, it's basically giving like an overload of information. It has got a lot more tougher to do digital, while it's also easier because now you have different platforms to express your brand personality that well. Maybe there is a brand that fits better on a Snapchat or an MX Takatak than it does on Twitter, for example. So you have that outlet to be able to bring that brand personality out a lot more. So definitely the fact that it's evolved, we don't just have social posts anymore. We can do influencer marketing. We are doing a lot more video marketing. We are doing so many experiential things with tech, with AR, VR. There is
Right.
a lot more to explore, definitely. Like it's a whole new ball game, but definitely we missed the planned approach that we could have to digital. It has its pros and cons both.
I believe that's absolutely correct. But the earlier way of working doesn't work anymore, right? Obviously, the way you used to plan earlier, have those Excel sheets and make sure that things go right on the dot kind of a thing, that doesn't work anymore. How has
Mm,
your agency, or how have you personally
coped with the explosion of work that has happened? And you've already told me that it's a 24/7 job. So how are you coping?
Yeah. So luckily, we've got an extensive, passionate team that is able to multiply that effect with us. Earlier, we were a small team of 10 people who were doing this religiously when we were doing the planned approach. But now we have extensive teams who are equally passionate to do this for the brands that we are working with to be able to cope with that. And luckily, we've been able to give them a little bit of guidance, and there is also a lot of throwing and figuring out yourself as you get into it, but that has helped. What we do is we have certain training modules or modules as such that we follow to make sure that a campaign gets enough and more reach that they should. And then as we get into the campaign, we always get our teams to question themselves on how we can do better, how we can go the extra mile. And that's something that we've sort of integrated in them to question themselves that can we do better than this? Can we go like 10% more, 20% more? And that sort of has helped us build our work portfolio, build our trust with our clients, etc. It has been a very hectic job, but I think the teams are also equally passionate to take that up and take it forward. And obviously, we have expanded our teams drastically with the expanding workload as well. So I think there's a balance there. We push our teams to take time off because digital is something that can get to you after a point very, very easily because you're constantly on the same platforms. There is no escape from it. You start seeing everything as work because you're spending time on an Instagram for work. And then when you're spending time on Instagram for leisure, you're still constantly thinking about your work.
The same thing happens when we watch news for us in PR as
Yeah.
well. Completely understand you have to be really passionate about getting into digital because while working on one own individual Instagram platform is different from handling multiple ones across different channels. But while is getting all the love and attention, there is also a strong spotlight on the entire industry. And now with ASCII also focusing on it, there are a lot of changes coming in. How are you coping with these new changes?
So I think the changes are good because it sort of puts a little bit of processes to the chaos and the madness that exist. Right now, if a client gives us a brief, they want us to get the most out of it. Versus when there will be a little bit of regulations, they will know that there will be certain things that we can't do. So having a little bit of regulations is definitely great. And I think what will be challenging is creating creative campaigns while we have certain restrictions or regulations. I think some of the best campaigns come out when you have challenges or restrictions in place. So I think we are looking forward to that.
Amazing. That's really nice to hear.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I do believe this is also amplified an impending crisis. Murphy's laws apply here as well, and in a ramped up version. We can no longer say that a crisis in digital goes viral within hours. It now takes minutes, sometimes maybe seconds. In this scenario, my question is, will these new guidelines help you manage a crisis better, or will it make it even more of a challenge?
I think it will be a mix of both because when we manage crisis right now, we have a lot more openness in terms of being able to tweak the message like we want it or how
Right.
we want the customer to perceive it, right? Which may not be possible after we have regulations and there will be multiple, like, for example, if I want a message from an influencer to go out, they are going to know that this is an ad versus now they don't know that it's an ad. Like it's not 100% compulsory now. We were able to do campaigns that don't necessarily, they look organic. And that's always the client brief. Make it look as organic as possible because the customer is smart in understanding that. So definitely there is going to be a little more difficulty in managing the crisis. But I think those regulations will reduce the number of crises also that happens because
Really?
we will follow a certain, yeah, we will. Right now, the thing is, there is an open hand for the influencer or whatever campaign we are doing to be able to say and put it in their sort of words, which can get perceived in a certain way by anyone else. Whereas when we have regulations, we will have definitely an ad sponsor there and everything, which will have multiple other layered communications so that the end consumer knows that, okay, this is limited to this piece of information, sort of thing. So I feel it's going to be a mix of both, but I think we'll find out once we get into it. Can't really predict anything with digital.
So when crisis hits, Rajni, what is the golden rule to help manage a crisis successfully on social media?
So, very interesting question, Tarun. So, the fact that we are in digital today and we are responding to topical things all the time that brands get to respond and make quirky posts is a lot shorter, right? Because you want to be quick and you want to get out there. So, the time spent on evaluating the response that the campaign would get or a post would get is very, very limited. So the number of crises that happen on social media is quite large. In fact, it happens very, very often, more often than you think. There are posts that are taken on by the big brands. I think we've seen some recent examples with Tanishq. We've seen with Zomato's outdoor campaign when they did the whole MCBC thing, which meant to be a more topical thing, but it got into different thing altogether online. We've seen some bigger brands like Amul when the milk was going bad. We've seen Uber having some really bad crises, Maggie getting banned. So the learning from all of these that I feel is that having a clear, crisp communication, owning up to your problem, right? If you've made a mistake, apologize and reinstate that this is not going to happen again and this was a one off incident. I think that sort of helps in retaining the brand trust at that point in time as well. And obviously, you can use different channels to sort of resonate that message through influencers, through branded ads. But being honest about it at that moment is one of the most important parts of crisis management, I feel. The customer sort of respects you for owning up and taking up the responsibility as a brand of your stature to continue buying or consuming your product or service eventually.
Rajni, while all this works for a brand and retaining the customer trust, we have always imagined when crisis hits that there are heads rolling at the agency end. What really happens at your end?
That's a tricky one to answer, Tarun. There's obviously in what capacity are we involved? What's the crisis? How was it taken care of? There are multiple things that go into it. And eventually, whatever ends up going out has a client approval. So it's a mistake. If a mistake happens, it happens at both ends. So I think so far we've had a simple, safe journey and we're hoping that that continues.
What has been your biggest learning in the industry since you joined?
The biggest learning would be always just have your eyes and ears open for opportunities, for triggers, for knowing what we can do for the brands that we work with, because there is an opportunity everywhere on digital. So I think that's the biggest learning I've had, is to just keep my eyes and ears open.
And that's the basic PR learning as well.
Yeah, I think that's the very basic learning of communication and marketing. I think if you just do that, I think you come across the most organic of places to sort of bring in a brand.
Right. And if somebody wants to work with you, what are the top skills that you will look at?
One is definitely a passion and culture match at SoCheers. That's one of the top things that we look at. Second would be their understanding of the industry and how do they perceive what they can do for brands and how they can leverage content for them. And
Right.
third would be content creation in general. It's very important to have an eye out for content creation. If you can do it for yourself, it becomes a lot more easier for brands. In fact, I think that's what helped me also when I was doing it for my own brand. It helped me understand a lot better for what I could do for other brands. So knowing what you can create is an important outlook as well. So these three things are what I usually look at hiring.
Yeah, it's interesting that you did not mention a degree in digital marketing.
No, there is no degree that can prepare you for digital. Like, there is nothing. They teach you the basics, but I think you only learn on the job. And I think that's true for PR as well. You learn a lot more on the job than a degree or an MBA can teach you.
Absolutely. You nailed that completely. Okay, so running out of time, so my last couple of questions for you. Your favorite digital tools that you think will be relevant for the PR world as well.
So I think we use this listening tools to understand what the customer is talking online. What are they talking about in relevance to the category, to the product, to the industry in general? I think that helps in PR as well. I think there are, in fact, some common tools that we use for digital and PR both. So that would be the favorite digital tool for me.
Okay. Your advice for PR professionals when they deal with the digital world.
I think they are pretty equipped already. I know like PR is almost overlapping with influencer marketing. Like it's a very thin line when it comes to influencer. Both PR agencies and digital agencies manage it. So it's similar, like I was talking about earlier also. The fundamentals are very similar in terms of understanding what the client wants, what's the communication going to be, and then it's understanding what platforms you want to get to. So if your fundamentals in PR are clear, then digital is also going to be equally easy. It's just that the platform of amplification is different, and that's not very difficult to get a hold of.
Absolutely. Your advice to PR professionals if they want to make the switch like you?
I think just go for it. You won't know. I mean, see, it's not going to be a very different job. You're fundamentally going to be doing the same thing. It's just that instead of working with media outlets and publications, you're going to be working with social platforms. That's going to be the only difference. Your communication, your understanding of the brand, what needs to get out, all of that remains the same. So, and digital is sort of a part of the future, if not completely. So it's definitely good to have a little bit of experience in what's going to be the future. So I
I
think go
would,
for it.
I would like to add there, if in PR and you're working 24 by 7, then when you shift to digital, it is going to be 24 by 7 by 2.
Yeah, yes, completely agree. That's there. If you're ready for the constant working, I think digital is going to be the thing. But yeah, it's fun.
I
It's a
think
whole new day every day.
I think PR guys are ideally suited for this because you're already working 24 by 7, right?
Yeah.
So it's been lovely talking to you, Rajni. Absolutely, delighted to have you on the podcast today and share your insights with us.
Thank you so much, Tarun. It was great coming here and wish y'all all the best for all the future podcasts y'all are planning to do.
Thank you.
So that was Rajni Daswani, Director Brand Experiences and Employee Engagement at SoCheers, talking to us about her digital journey and how she made the switch from PR. Would like to give a shout out to the good folks at PRPOI. This episode was brought to you via a special arrangement with them. Thank you again for tuning in today, and we will see you next week for another interesting conversation from the world of communication.